I remember the moment before everything went dark. Rain poured like the sky itself was grieving for me, soaking through my thin clothes as I stood outside the mansion gates, the place I once called home. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the truth I had just learned. I wasn't their daughter. Not really. The woman I had called mother refused to even look at me. Her voice was sharp, cutting deeper than the storm. You've taken enough from her. Leave. Her, the real daughter. The one they had found years too late. And just like that, everything I had been was erased. I turned away slowly, my chest tightening with every step. No one followed. No one stopped me, so. Not even the one person I thought might. Her. She stood there under the golden lights of the mansion, arms crossed, eyes cold, watching me fall apart. The girl who replaced me. The one who smiled when I lost everything. My vision blurred, but I kept walking. I had nowhere to go, nothing to hold on to, just the echo of a life that was never truly mine. And then, a sharp sound. A flash of headlights. Pain. Everything shattered. When I opened my eyes again, the world felt wrong. Too quiet. Too familiar. I sat up abruptly, my breath catching in my throat. The room. It was my old bedroom. The soft cream walls, the delicate curtains swaying in the breeze, the faint scent of lavender lingering in the air. It was exactly as I remembered it. Before everything fell apart. My hands clenched the sheets, heart pounding violently in my chest. No, this isn't possible. A soft knock came at the door. Miss, you're awake earlier than usual. The voice. My heart nearly stopped. It was the housemaid, the one who had been kind to me before everything changed, before I was thrown out, before I died. My fingers trembled as I touched my face, my hair. Everything felt real. Too real. I wasn't dreaming. I had come back. Reborn. Before the truth was revealed. Before I lost everything. Before she took my place. A slow breath left my lips as something unfamiliar settled deep inside me. Not fear, not confusion, but something colder. Clearer. This time, I knew what was coming. And this time, I wouldn't lose. Not my identity, not my place, not myself. I swung my legs over the bed, my bare feet touching the cold marble floor. The morning light spilled across the room, warm and golden, but inside me something had already changed. Soft, naive, trusting. That version of me had died in the rain. And what remained was someone who would make them regret ever underestimating her. The house felt different the moment I stepped out of my room. It hadn't changed. Not really. The same polished marble floors reflected the sunlight, the same quiet footsteps of staff echoed in the hallways, and the same expensive silence filled every corner. But I had changed. Every glance, every word, every small detail. I noticed it all now. Miss, breakfast is ready? The housemaid said gently, her eyes warmer than I remembered. I gave a small nod, masking the storm inside me. The dining hall greeted me with its usual grandeur, long table, fresh flowers, sunlight pouring through tall windows. And there they were. The people who had once called me family. My mother sat at the head of the table, elegant as always, her posture flawless, her expression unreadable. Across from her was him, the man who had raised me, flipping through a newspaper without a second glance in my direction. And beside them, her, the girl who would soon take everything from me. She looked different now that I knew the truth. Softer on the outside, yes. But beneath that, I could already see it. The quiet calculation, the hunger to belong, no matter the cost. Come, sit, my mother said, her tone polite, distant. I obeyed, taking my seat. Every movement felt like walking on a stage I had already performed in once before. Except this time, I knew how the story ended. and I refused to let it repeat. "I heard you weren't feeling well yesterday," she added casually. A test. I forced a faint smile. "Just a little tired." Her eyes lingered on me for a second longer than necessary, as if searching for something. Suspicion. Good. Let her wonder. Let all of them wonder. Breakfast continued in silence, but the tension was unmistakable. The clink of cutlery, the soft rustle of fabric, the occasional glance, it all felt heavier than before. Then, suddenly, "I'll be staying here for a while," the other girl spoke softly. The room shifted. Of course she would. This was the beginning. I lowered my gaze slightly, hiding the flicker of emotion in my eyes. This was where I had once felt threatened, insecure, desperate to prove I belonged, but not anymore. This time, I leaned back slightly, my fingers brushing against the edge of the table as I studied her calmly. "Of course," I said gently. "You're welcome here." The words surprised even her. A small crack appeared in her composure. Good. Confusion was my first advantage. Because while she was preparing to take my place, I was preparing to expose the truth. Piece by piece. I picked up my teacup, the warmth steady in my hands as a quiet realization settled deep inside me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was a game. And this time, I already knew every move. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. On the surface, everything seemed normal. The household carried on as usual, meals were served, conversations remained polite, and the illusion of harmony stayed intact. But beneath it all, the tension was growing. I watched her carefully. Every smile she gave, every hesitant step she took, every moment she tried to win their affection. She was learning quickly, adapting, becoming exactly what they wanted her to be. And just like before, they were beginning to notice her more, to care for her more, to choose her. But this time, I didn't panic. I observed. There was something different I hadn't fully understood before. She wasn't just trying to belong. She was afraid. Afraid of losing this place. Just like I once had. That fear made her dangerous. But it also made her predictable. One afternoon, I found her alone in the garden. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows across her face. She looked almost fragile. For a moment I hesitated. This was the girl who would destroy my life. But she was also human. "You like it here?" I asked quietly, stepping closer. She flinched slightly before turning to me. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady, but her eyes gave her away. Uncertainty. "I'm glad," I said, offering a small, genuine smile. It caught her off guard. "You are?" she asked. I nodded. Everyone deserves a place to belong. The words hung between us, heavier than they should have been, because they were true. And for a brief moment, I meant them. But reality returned quickly. Because belonging, in this house, came at a cost, and only one of us could truly have it. As the days passed, small cracks began to appear, a misplaced document, a quiet disagreement, a subtle shift in trust, nothing obvious, nothing that could be traced back to me, but enough to plant doubt. I didn't need to destroy her directly, I just needed to let the truth find its way to the surface, and it would, because lies never stay buried forever. One evening, as I stood by the window, watching the fading light, a quiet voice broke my thoughts. "Why are you being so kind to me?" I turned. She stood there, her expression conflicted. I studied her for a moment before answering. Because I know what it feels like. To lose everything. Her breath caught slightly, and in that moment I saw it. The shift. The beginning of something unexpected. Not trust. Not yet. But doubt. And doubt was the first step toward breaking everything she thought she knew. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. That was the first thought that crossed my mind as I stood in the quiet study, watching her from across the room. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the dust in the air, turning everything soft, almost unreal. She sat at the desk, flipping through documents with careful focus. Her posture was composed, her movements controlled, but there was something else now, something new. Hesitation. And I was the reason for it. "You're looking at me again," she said without lifting her gaze. A faint smile tugged at my lips. I could say the same. She finally looked up, her eyes meeting mine, and for a second, everything else disappeared. There it was again. That unspoken tension, not hostility, not quite trust. Something in between, something dangerous. "You've changed," she said quietly. I stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Have I?" I asked. Her gaze didn't waver. "You're not reacting the way I expected." Of course I wasn't. Because the girl she thought she was replacing no longer existed. I leaned against the edge of the desk, close enough to feel the subtle shift in her breathing. "Maybe I just see things differently now," I said softly. She studied me, searching for something she couldn't quite name. And for the first time, she looked unsure. That night, the tension lingered. Not in arguments, not in obvious conflict, but in the quiet moments. A brush of hands as we reached for the same glass, a pause that lasted just a second too long, a glance that held more meaning than it should. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. And it was growing. I wasn't just changing the outcome anymore. I was changing the connection itself. And that scared me more than anything. Because this wasn't part of the plan. I was supposed to stay distant, cold, focused. But every time she looked at me like that, every time her guard slipped, even for a second, it became harder to remember why I started this in the first place. Revenge, truth, justice. Those were the reasons. But now, there was something else. Something quieter. Something I wasn't ready to face. And as I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, one question echoed in my mind. What happens when the person you were meant to defeat becomes the one you can't stop thinking about? The turning point came sooner than I expected. It always does. Truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully it's buried. The tension in the house had reached its peak. Small incidents had turned into whispered conversations. Doubts had grown into suspicion. And finally, the cracks could no longer be ignored. It happened during dinner. A simple conversation that quickly turned into something else. "Where did you say you found that document?" My father asked, his tone calm but sharp. She froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. I thought it was in the study," she replied. A lie. A small one. But in this house, small lies carried weight. I watched silently, my fingers resting lightly against the table as the atmosphere shifted. This was it, the moment everything began to unravel. "You thought?" he repeated. The pressure in his voice made her hesitate again, and that hesitation was everything. "I might have moved it by accident," she added quickly, but it was too late. Doubt had already taken root. I lowered my gaze slightly, hiding the flicker of emotion in my eyes. I hadn't exposed her, not directly. I had simply guided the truth into the light, and now it was doing the rest on its own. Dinner ended in silence, but the damage had been done. Later that night, I found her standing alone in the hallway. Her usual composure was gone. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I stopped a few steps away, studying her. "Why do you think I did anything?" I replied calmly. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, uncertain. "Because everything started changing when you did." A long pause followed. Then slowly I stepped closer. Not threatening, not aggressive, just close enough to make her feel the truth she was trying to avoid. "Maybe things were always meant to change," I said quietly. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, She looked like she was about to break. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of anger, instead of confrontation, her shoulders dropped slightly. "I didn't mean to take anything from you," she said softly. The words hit harder than I expected, because for the first time, she sounded sincere, and that changed everything. I didn't sleep that night. Her words echoed in my mind, over and over again. "I didn't mean to take anything from you. It would have been easier if she had been cruel, if she had been selfish, if she had been exactly the person I remembered. But she wasn't. And that made this complicated. And the next morning felt different, heavier, quieter. Like the house itself was waiting for something to happen. I found her in the garden again, the same place we had spoken before. But this time, she looked smaller, not physically, emotionally. "I know the truth," I said softly. She didn't react immediately, just closed her eyes for a brief moment as if she had been expecting it. "Then say it," she whispered. So I did. Everything. The lies, the mistakes, the truth about who she was and who I was. When I finished, the silence that followed felt endless. "I never wanted this," she said finally. "I know." "You're not angry?" she asked. I hesitated, because I was, but not in the way I used to be. I was, I admitted. Her eyes met mine, and now I took a slow breath. Now I saw her, not as the person who ruined my life, but as someone who had been caught in the same storm. "I just don't want to lose myself again," I said quietly. Something shifted in her expression. Relief. Understanding. Maybe even something softer. And then she stepped closer. Carefully. Like she was afraid I might pull away. But I didn't. Her hand brushed against mine. Light. Hesitant. But real. "I don't want to take your place," she said. The warmth of her touch lingered longer than it should have, and for the first time, I believed her. The truth didn't destroy us. It set us free. That was the strangest part. I had spent so much time preparing for a battle that I never expected what came after. Peace. Not perfect. Not easy, but real. The confrontation with the family came soon after. This time there were no lies, no confusion, just the truth, laid out clearly for everyone to see. And for once, they listened. Shock. Regret. Silence. It all played out exactly as I had imagined. But what I hadn't imagined was how little it mattered now, because I wasn't fighting for their approval anymore. I wasn't trying to hold on to something that was never truly mine. I had already found something else. Something better. Understanding. Connection. Her. We stood side by side as everything settled. Not as rivals, not as enemies, but as two people who had been through the same pain and chose not to let it destroy them. "I'm sorry," my mother said quietly. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just distance. "It's okay," I replied. And it was. Because forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about me. Later that evening, I found her waiting outside. The sky was clear, the air soft and warm. "You're leaving?" I asked. She nodded. "For now." A pause. Then, "I don't think this place ever really belonged to either of us." I smiled faintly. "Maybe not." She stepped closer, not hesitant this time. Certain. Her hand found mine again, and this time she didn't pull away. Then let's find something that does, she said. The simplicity of it, the honesty, it felt right. For the first time, there was no tension, no fear, no expectations, just possibility. I squeezed her hand gently, a quiet promise passing between us. Together? I asked. She smiled. Soft, warm, real. Together. And just like that, and the story that once ended in loss began again, not as something broken, but as something new, something we would build side by side.